Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking the ultimate roadmap for your entire 7th grade modern world history course. Honestly, if you've ever found yourself wondering how all the scattered pieces of our global past actually fit together to build the world we're living in right now, well, you're in the exact right place. We're going to be looking at some massive shifts in human history. The epic rise and fall of empires, and those wild, radical ideas that literally rewired human society from the ground up. But hold on a second. Before we go charging headfirst into revolutions and world wars, we really need to talk about how we start. Check out this quote straight from your curriculum guide. It says, "The first unit of the semester can be the most important for the year. It will create the foundations for the entire year." So yeah, instead of just diving in feet first and memorizing a bunch of random dates, we've got to build that foundation first. Why? Because the core concepts, the systems, and the new ways of thinking you learn on day one, they're basically the master key that's going to unlock the rest of the year for you. Okay, so here's our game plan, our agenda for the year. We're going to kick things off with setting the foundation, then move right into Unit 1, Middle Ages. After that, we hit Unit 2, Changing World, and roll into Unit 3, Modern Times. Finally, we'll wrap up by looking at the big historical outcomes. All right, let's jump straight into Part 1, setting the foundation and mapping out our year. So picture your school year like this. It's broken down into 3 totally distinct 13-week blocks, adding up to 39 weeks total. This means instead of just a chaotic jumble of random events, you've got a solid structure. You kick off with Unit 1, soaking in the Middle Ages. Then, right around week 14, bam, you shift gears into Unit 2, which is all about a changing world. And then you spend your final 13 weeks anchored in Unit 3. Modern Times. Each one of these blocks zooms in on a massive, undeniable shift in human history. Moving right along to Part 2, let's look at Unit 1, Middle Ages, and see how we actually build that foundation. Now, this question right here, this is your anchor for those first 13 weeks. You're not just going to sit there passively memorizing facts. No, you're basically acting as a historical investigator trying to answer this. How did medieval societies organize power, belief, trade, and daily life? And the cool part is, we aren't just staring at one spot on the map. You'll be exploring medieval China, Africa, Japan, Europe, and the Americas. So we're talking a truly global perspective here. To actually solve that mystery, you've got to understand the big systems running in the background, specifically feudal and imperial systems. These are essentially the invisible structures that medieval societies used to organize power, land, and their people. You're going to learn how to break these core systems down. But more importantly, you'll see how these giant power structures trickled all the way down to shape the daily lives, the jobs, and the beliefs of everyday folks who were just trying to make a living centuries ago. There's this really common misconception that the Middle Ages were just this dark time when absolutely nothing happened. But look around the globe. Over in China, they're busy producing gunpowder, the compass, and printed books, technologies that will literally change global warfare and navigation forever. Meanwhile, south of the Sahara, African societies are bursting with rich new forms of music and dance. Jump over to Japan, and they're actively developing a constitution while creating incredible new art and poetry. And in Europe, they're taking their very first kind of messy steps toward representative government. It was actually a super bustling, innovative globe. But as we know, nothing stays the same forever, right? Eventually, we hit this massive turning point on our timeline, and we start asking, why did the traditional Middle Ages come to an end? We'll start putting those deeply rooted medieval traditions head-to-head against some radical new philosophies, specifically the explosive ideas that burst onto the scene during the Renaissance and the Enlightenment. That friction, the clash between old traditions and fresh ideas, that is the exact engine that drives us right into the next phase of history. Which brings us to Part 3, Unit 2, Changing World, where we focus on a huge shift in ideas. As you dig into early Americans up to the 16th century and move through the Renaissance, the Reformation, and the Enlightenment, you're going to tackle this absolute beast of a question. Why do new ideas sometimes transform whole societies? Really think about that for a second. An idea is totally invisible. It's just a thought rattling around in someone's head. Yet, in this unit, you'll see firsthand how invisible ideas about science, human rights, and religion completely dismantled old empires and built new ones. So, the defining feature of this whole era is rapid global change, fueled heavily by these new scientific, political, and economic ideas. Over these 13 weeks, you won't just be reading about this change, you'll be actively tracing the direct causes and the messy effects of all these reform movements. You're going to dive into the nitty-gritty of economic principles, like production, distribution, and consumption, and discover how geography and human behavior shape entire economies. Basically, you'll be evaluating how early industry and fresh intellectual movements completely rewired cultures and social systems all over the map. All right, shifting gears again into Part 4, Unit 3, Modern Times, an era defined by revolution and conflict. The absolute crucial takeaway here is understanding the wild, rapid-fire succession of global conflicts and tech developments that directly molded the world you're living in right now. You're going to examine the French Revolution and the Industrial Revolution, both of which totally turned Europe and the United States upside down. Then you'll look at the world before and after imperialism and World War I. You'll unpack the incredibly intense causes and the devastating fallout of World War II, which bleeds right into the tension of the Cold War. And finally, you'll study the post-Cold War era. Honestly, this is essentially the foundation for every piece of modern news you scroll past on your feeds today. And that leads us to our final section, Part 5, the big historical outcomes, lenses, and skills. Throughout this whole year, the official standards your teacher uses are going to translate into what we call lenses. Think of them like snapping on different pairs of glasses to see the world. In Unit 1, you'll put on your geography glasses to see how the physical environment physically shapes human societies. Then, in Unit 2, you'll swap those out for economics and culture glasses, so you can examine how societies produce goods and forge their identities. And by Unit 3, you're wearing government and conflict glasses, analyzing exactly why societies adopt certain governments, how science and tech impact us all, and the diplomacy and wars born from international friction. You're just constantly swapping lenses to get the fullest, truest picture possible. By the time you finish this epic 39-week journey, you're going to walk away with some incredibly powerful, concrete skills. We're talking the ability to compare vastly diverse civilizations. You'll basically be a master at tracing historical causes and effects, proving that absolutely nothing happens in a vacuum. You're going to have the vocabulary to explain super complex scientific and political concepts, plus the critical thinking chops to evaluate the real human impact of industrial change. And these skills, they don't just help you ace history, they empower you to analyze literally any current event happening in our world today. Which brings us to one last thought to chew on. If the radical new ideas of the past, things like the printing press or representative government or the Industrial Revolution, if they completely transformed their societies, what new ideas are transforming our world right now? Keep that question in the back of your mind as you step into Unit 1 on day 1, because when it comes down to it, understanding their history is the ultimate key to understanding your future. Good luck on your 39-week journey.